Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Fiber for Breakfast. We're now in our 26th episode of 2022, so we are basically halfway through the year. But before I kick off, I'd like to thank our sponsors of Fiber for Breakfast, including our gold sponsors, CHR Solutions, Millennium, and Plume, and our silver sponsor, Graybar. Yesterday I was in Binghamton, New York with my friend Jen Gregory, the Executive Director of Southern 8 Regional Planning Development Board for the Upstate Rural Broadband Conference. Southern 8 has an ambitious 8-county multi-year initiative to connect every address to high-speed broadband. Spending time with Jen and the amazing folks in Binghamton yesterday was a great reminder on why what we do is so incredibly important for these communities and families. So hats off to Jen and her team, and I'm so excited for the tremendous positive impact for these 8 counties in rural North New York and what they will experience. Yesterday in Comms Daily, there was an article citing that Starlink's download speeds are up 38% from the past year. Wow, that sounds pretty good. However, when you read further, you find that Starlink's average upload speed has actually decreased year over year from 16 megabits to 9 megabits per second, and the latency has increased nearly 10% over the same period. Considering how lightly loaded Starlink satellites are, I can't even begin to imagine how bad their service is going to be if they had any volume of customers. So hopefully FCC is going to continue to hold the line and not approve Starlink's RDOF long-form applications, and those 640,000 RDOF locations will now get fiber from the BEAD funding. For today's fiber broadband session, we're going to be discussing one of my favorite topics, rural broadband, in a session titled Changing the Fate of Rural Missouri with Fiber Broadband, an electric co-op with more broadband subscribers than electric members, with Darren Farnan, General Manager of United Fiber. But before I formally introduce today's guests, I'd like to introduce Trish Ehlers from team, who's going to walk us through some housekeeping items.
Thanks, Gary, and good morning to everyone who's joined us this morning. Before I go over a few logistical items, I'd like to once again thank our Fiber for Breakfast sponsors, gold sponsors, CHR Solutions, Millennium, and Plume, and silver sponsor, Graybar. Now, if you'd all keep in mind that everyone's in listen mode only, to ask a question, you can just type it into the question box located within your control panel at the right side of your screen. We'll host a Q&A session with our panelists at the end of today's session. This presentation is being recorded and will be available to members only on FBA's website within 24 hours. You can find the recording in the Events tab under the Fiber for Breakfast drop-down option. At the conclusion of the presentation, you'll be prompted to complete a very brief feedback survey. If you just take a minute to do so, we'd really appreciate your input. I'll pass it back to Gary now to introduce our panelists and get us started. Gary?
Thanks, Trish. And good morning. I'm Gary Bolton, the President and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association. Last week at Fiber for Breakfast, we held a roundtable discussion on fiber connecting the dots, the post-show recap, with two of the industry's leading analysts, Julie Kunstler and Jamie Linderman from research firm Omnia. I'm still feeling the energy and excitement from our conference in Nashville a few weeks ago, and it was great to hear Julie and Jamie's key takeaways from our event. But speaking of events, I want to also remind everyone that our next Regional Fiber Connect workshop is at the Copper Mountain Resort in Colorado on August 23rd, and we'll be in Columbus, Ohio on November 3rd. Both workshops will sell out quickly, so please register today. Now back to Fiber for Breakfast. In today's session, we're going to be discussing changing the fate of rural Missouri with fiber broadband, an electric co-op with more broadband subscribers than electric members, with Darren Farnan, the General Manager of United Fiber. I always love hearing from leaders such as Darren on how they are transforming their communities with fiber, especially when they can do this in rural Missouri with super low subscriber densities, I think in the order of 2.5 meters per mile. So that's really impressive. Darren has worked for United Electric Co-op since 1994 and serves as the General Manager of United Fiber. Darren has also served in the roles of Chief Development Officer and Energy Services Manager for United. Darren led the development and operations of United Fiber Network which has grown to over 3,200 miles of fiber, 54 employees, and 25 million in annual revenue since turning up their first fiber customer in 2013. Currently, United Fiber is approaching 25,000 combined residential and commercial fiber customers. Darren received his BS in Business Management and MBA from Northwest Missouri State University. Darren serves as the chair of the UTC Utilities Broadband Committee from 2018 to 2021. So with all that, welcome, Darren. And please type in your questions as we go, and we'll get them into the Q&A. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Darren.
All right, Gary. Well, thank you for the introduction, and great to be here with you all. And again, just wanted to echo your thoughts. That was a great session. I was glad to be in Nashville, and what a great meeting that was, and really good to make connections down there. So appreciate all the efforts that you and the team do to advance this cause. So I'm going to start off by, kind of giving a little bit of a background. We've been in this for a long time. We were one of the early co-ops to really get into the fiber business. I think today there's well over 200 of the nearly 900 co-ops throughout the country that are doing some form of fiber broadband. And but back when we started back in 2010, 2011, it was kind of a unique thing. And the first question I put here, is what we got a lot from both both locally and nationally, and it says, why is an electric co-op in the fiber business? What do you all know about fiber? And really where we started, I'm going to kind of take these first two dot points to kind of describe it, but we had been we'd had subsidiary businesses since I started in 1994, which started off with DirecTV territory that we owned. We got into satellite broadband because of member surveys and things that indicated that that's what they needed, and moved on into wireless services and kind of worked with an adjoining co-op on that type of a service as well. But we knew we had a severe lack of service served by a large incumbent telco in most of our rural markets. As you mentioned, Gary, we're about 7,500 members, 10,000 meters, and again, average about 2.5 meters per mile. Now that's not homes per mile, that's meters per mile. So that could be a pump, a bin, or a barn, or who knows, it could be a lot of different things. So again, the thought of bringing fiber to all those folks seemed like a bit of a potential pipe dream at the time, but we knew the limitations. We saw the limitations early on of satellite and wireless, even though we still use some wireless services today in temporary methods or to, for different things, again, because we have that fiber backhaul that allows us to do some things with that, but it's by far the very small part of our business now. When we did a survey of our membership back in 2010, in these areas we were looking to apply for funding, we found that almost 90%, 89% at that time, as you remember, at that time it was 4x1 was the definition of broadband with the FCC. So I'm aging myself, but we did that survey, and 89% said that they did not have access to that type of a service. So, thinking of how that's progressed or where that might still be today is kind of a scary thought. So, as we kept looking at it, we thought, we're going to apply for some funding. And I'll get into that in the future slides, but that's kind of what spurred us into this and said, we saw those limitations, we knew our membership needed it, and that's really where we started. I think the other advantage from an electric co-op standpoint is that, we have existing infrastructure and we understand utility delivery, and that's how we treat this business. It's by building on our poles. Again, when you're at 2.5 meters per mile, there's no economical way of doing it, but you can sure do it a lot cheaper on our existing infrastructure than people could if they were trying to put this underground or do other methods of construction. So that is an advantage. We've maintained those poles and wires. We've done this for 80 years and look to do it for another 80 or plus. So it's just another service that we're able to bring out, and and we've seen this analogy brought about, but it's just like the rural areas were lit up in the 30s and 40s with electricity, and doing that same thing and using that existing infrastructure to do it as the most economically really that it can be done. So the more co-ops that get into this and electric providers, I think the better that we can get fiber out there on that existing infrastructure. And then kind of the last two things I'll take in tandem, but it's really what we're here for. We're here to advance the rural way of life and improve the rural way of life for our membership, and frankly, nobody else was willing to do it. If we would have relied on that existing ILEC, that big incumbent provider, do this service, we'd still be sitting at 1 meg services today, out there in these rural markets. So again, if somebody else would have been here doing it, we weren't necessarily looking to do it. We were doing it because our members said they needed it. And that's really what spurred us, to look at this. And even though we didn't really, I'll be honest, when we got into fiber, I thought, man, if we could ever get to 5,000 homes passed, that's going to be great. So it's changed a lot. So over the last few years, and that demand has really just driven that. So if we could go to the next slide. So kind of a depiction over to the right here of kind of our service area, but roughly, just so you can kind of see that the north part of that is the Iowa border, and the south part is Kansas City, just to keep it easy. And we serve a lot of areas within that and a number of communities. So again, we started off with, as Gary mentioned, we turned up our first customers in 2013, and that was all on our existing electric infrastructure in our rural markets. And we started our first community builds in 2016. So really this has been fairly recent, and the success that we've seen and the demand really, which has driven that, has really been amazing, what we've seen over the last few years. And as Gary mentioned, we're approaching 25,000 combined residential and commercial subscribers, 3,200 miles of fiber that we've built since 2011 and growing fast. And again, I mentioned kind of the area. A lot of you, if you've flown into the Kansas City airport, we're just north of that is where our service kind of ends. And we've really there's been a huge amount of demand. I mean, that's actually, we're partnering with another co-op down there. They didn't want to get into the business, but they welcomed us to come in. And so we're actually building a combination of underground and then building on their lines as well. And we're attaching just as any other attacher would, but we are, getting the benefit of the growth and things that are happening in that North Kansas City area, which helps offset our lower density that we have up in the northern part of our market. So again, we've opened kind of a thing we'll talk about a little bit more, but the personal presence, I mean, the local aspect of what we do, having that same member mentality in everything we do, whether that's on the electric side or on the fiber side, is, I think, a key to our success. And we've opened additional offices. We've always had our electric offices in Maryville and Savannah, which are our headquarters. And then we've also opened offices in Excelsior Springs, Cameron, Smithville, which is again down near Kansas City, and then soon to be St. Joseph. We've purchased a building in St. Joseph, and that's going to be our next big build. St. Joe's a town of about 80,000, over 30,000 passing. So obviously that's a big bite for us to take. Something we really haven't been, based on our size and scope, would have been difficult early on, but that's something that we're in the process right now of doing, is building St. Joe, which is the largest community in our market. And again, as we mentioned, the 54 full-time employees as of today. Who knows, tomorrow that number's probably growing. We've said I'm going to have to get a kind of a notepad and pictures so I can remember how many. I know everybody when I see them in the hall, because this growth has been pretty staggering over the last, we've all talked about what COVID's done to the growth, and we've not seen that really decline since. So we're just adding people, which is, again, for towns the size of Maryville, Savannah, Savannah's about 5,000 people, Maryville's about 12,000, but we've become actually a fairly large employer in the area and bringing good paying jobs to the region, along with all the other side benefits, along with the main benefits of what the fiber network is bringing to the areas. So, okay, if we can go on to the next slide. So just to give you a base of what we do, we're all fiber to the home, fiber to the business, and we offer up to gigabit service. As you see here, 200 meg, 500 meg, and gigabit services. Soon to offer services over in the 2 to 5 gig range. We're putting those packages together right now as we get our network upgraded to handle that. So again, the capacity that the fiber brings to the areas is really the, obviously, as we all know, is the real benefit. And we also offer voice and video services. So we do have TV services as well. And even though, like with voice, for example, I know there's not a lot, we don't do a lot on the residential side, that's gone more to cell phones and things like that, but we do a lot of business phone services, and a lot of the phone services in the area, especially these smaller communities, are old systems. They're wanting to upgrade, but they don't really know how to do it, and they need help with getting a new PBX or with maintaining their phones. So that's really been another, I think, big benefit that we brought to the area, and it's on both ways. It's been a good business for us, and it's also provided help for a lot of the small business owners in these smaller communities to upgrade their services to what they would expect in today's market. Okay, if we can go to the next slide. So I mentioned funding, and that funding is really what got us into that. Back in 2010, as part of that survey that we did of our membership, we applied through the ARA, American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and not really thinking we would get it, but we applied for a portion of our area that, again, about 14 of our substation areas, and we were fortunately awarded about 21 million at that time, a combination of a grant loan to build those markets. And again, that was about just under 5,000 passings. So, you know, as we got into this was really just a focus on our membership, getting services out there that we needed. And we knew there would be some side benefit as well to our electric service and connecting our substations. And as we talk about smart grid and all the different pieces that happen there, but really this was about serving our membership. And so that's really what got us started. And so again, we started construction in 2011, part of the RUS build. And by the time we met all that criteria, we really started releasing in, like I said, early 2013 for membership. Fast forward, as we've gotten into both CAF2 and RDOF funding, we've been fortunate enough to gain money in those high cost areas as well. In 2019, again, about another 20 million through CAF2, and in 2021, we just received our final notification of award, but a little over $7.5 million to get to really some of our highest cost membership areas, which was, we really felt good about this, because this is we have a couple of counties where that home density drops down to about 1, and this is helping us you know, offset the cost to get to those places. So this is really what has spurred us into it. And then but so I feel like when you have as low a density as we have, and we were very challenged, I'll be honest, we were very challenged on the electric side. That's not a good economic outlook to have, you know, that many miles of line with only that many members, and the costs that go up with trucks and copper and all the different costs that are going up. We were one of the highest rate-wise, we're the highest in the state of Missouri from a co-op standpoint at the time when we started into this. And I'll talk later about all the benefits that have made, you know, that have come about because of what fiber's done for our business overall as well internally. So if we can go on to the next slide. So again, we talked about where we serve. The success that United's had was that two-pronged approach. Because of our low density has been the funding. Really the drivers of our success have been the funding, and to me, the community builds. Our board, we've been in subsidiary businesses for a long time, since I started in '94. So they're used to competitive environments. I know this is new for some electric co-ops because they're just used to providing electricity, but this is something that our board had kind of a, you know, an introduction to, and we've been fairly successful in some of the other businesses, but nothing to the scale of what fiber's done. And so, you know, we built our first, you see up in the upper right, Cameron, Missouri, which is a town of about 9,000, but they were Muni owned. So we worked with them and got access to their poles, and has been a wildly successful location. That was the first community we built along with a small community called King City, Missouri at the time, because we wanted to build one of each, a small community and a larger community, just to kind of see what would happen and what our take rates would be. And we have now gotten to almost right at 70% penetration in Cameron, which was a competitive cable market. So it's been, again, wildly successful, gave our board the peace of mind, you know, to say, hey, yeah, keep going. This is great. We took a regional approach. Again, we do not serve any of these communities. We serve really no communities in our area. We serve all of the rural markets with electricity. So this was a kind of a leap of faith of us and our board that, you know, that did this. And it's, again, that's what's really driven our success. Again, now over 40 communities that we've built, and many of these, you know, did not have access. They were on, again, this large ILEC provider that, you know, they just didn't have service. And I think of where we've been the last 2 years, what would have happened in those communities from an education and working from home standpoint if we hadn't had the good fortune of, you know, getting these communities built and bringing that benefit. So again, a couple of large employers, I show Mosaic. Mosaic is the regional healthcare provider in the area. And again, early on, they asked us to connect a lot of their buildings in St. Joe, which is that larger residential build that we're talking about doing. But we did go ahead and connect their buildings early on, which we felt would be great because it would help connect a lot of our rural clinics, nursing homes, other things that we could connect them right to the primary healthcare provider in the area. So early on, that network got put in place. I show Kawasaki down at the bottom. Again, we're up to almost 2,000 commercial customers and growing quickly there. But Kawasaki was one of the first ones we brought on. They're the major employer in Maryville, and I'll talk a little bit more later about, what their situation was like before fiber and what it was like after fiber. Okay, if we can go on to the next slide. So again, just to kind of a look at these communities, most of these communities, we always talk about our sweet spot of communities has really been in that we started off in that, other than Cameron, which was a muni and helped us with our cost to build, a lot of these communities are in the 500 to 2,500 range. So again, smaller communities, most did not have any active cable service and were just relying on very poor DSL, to get by. And as a rural electric provider, we've seen the challenges of keeping people in rural America. And if you lose your community, if you lose your school, it becomes a lot harder. And as we all know, when people are looking for a place to live now, that's one of the first things they look at is, do I have access to broadband? And not only that, if I have access to fiber, that's a whole different story, right? So we've really, I think, changed, really forever, the economic outlook of this area. And it's hard to know where we would have been, but we know at least now that we've taken down those barriers and people are able to live, many places in Northwest Missouri and have access to gigabit plus broadband that they would, that would equal anywhere in any of the larger communities in the state of Missouri. So again, the revenue and average density that these community builds have really helped us continue to push out in our rural markets, get all of our members connected, which we're hoping to have done by the end of this next year. And that's really wouldn't be possible if we hadn't done those things. So even the funding that we receive federally, that $20 million sounds like a lot, but we spend that pretty quickly when we're building the number of miles we're building. So it's really helped us offset those costs. Again, I talked about a lot of the early communities were smaller, and now we've built all the larger communities. Like I said, St. Joe is kind of that last big market that, like I said, I would have never envisioned, 8 years ago when we started this, that would be a possibility. And now here we are building that and getting huge take rates in the communities that we've built so far. Again, unlimited bandwidth, the value that we bring to these communities, and the ability for people, as we've all seen from COVID, to educate from home, work from home, it's just been, we definitely heard it. We're not everywhere, so we definitely heard from the people that did not have access to it. But I can't imagine what would have happened in our local communities with our schools and things if we wouldn't have started this back when we did. So next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about, I kind of mentioned those success stories, and we talked about Mosaic and having the ability to connect a lot of our local healthcare facilities. I mentioned Kawasaki, so I'm going to talk about them. That was one of the first commercial businesses we brought on, and like I said, that's the largest employer in Maryville. They employ over 1,000 people. They're a huge manufacturing facility there. And when we started this and when we connected them, I think we started doing that in that was 2014. They had 6 bonded T1s that they were using for their whole internal system. And when they downloaded engineering files from their other plants they had to get everybody else off the internet, off the system, download their engineering files, and then start over. So you think of a manufacturing facility of that size that's measuring productivity in minutes. That's we never did the math on the economic impact, but the fact of them, we now have dual feeds going into the building from different substations, and like I said, they've been a big customer and big success story for what we've done. And like I said, it really added early on, especially to their efficiency, really running their business and making sure that they could maintain. Because if that's a business that decided to get out of Maryville because they couldn't get the type of broadband service they needed, that would have a huge economic impact and a big blow to the community. Another one we had was an ambulance district that was there in town, the county ambulance district. And when we first started with them, they were doing their backup files nightly, and it was taking them over 20 hours to do sometimes these backup files. And so I know the first time after they hooked up the fiber, the guy that ran the ambulance barn called me and said, "Hey, it took us 12 minutes last night to get our backups done." So it's just those things that we've seen on the commercial side that we've been able to provide the opportunity for those folks to have really world-class business services. I mean, whether we're talking video, voice, or data. And then on the residential side, just a couple of stories that stuck in my mind is we had a gal that was an really big supporter early on. She's an electric member, lives south of Savannah, but she was driving 75 miles one way to Kansas City every day to go to work because she didn't have good enough internet service to connect through a VPN to work. As soon as she got fiber, she said, I don't even want to go to the office now because my broadband's so much better at home than it is even when I go to the office. So, when you hear that, and this was back in like 2015, so this was early on, and she's been a huge proponent, for us the whole time. And, countless stories, but I think of another one offhand, one of our members over in the Stanbury, Missouri area, small community, and they actually live outside of town, and they've developed like a pretty successful travel agency that they run out of their home. And again, those opportunities that couldn't happen. You think of real estate, healthcare, whatever it is people are doing, and we get every day. Literally, we have over 50 people hit our website every day. Some in our area, but many out, saying, "Hey, I have to have this. I work for this insurance company, or I work for this healthcare provider. I have to have this to work and live in my home." So we've never seen, when we first started, it was a bit more of a want, right? And we saw it progressing early on, but especially over the last 2 to 3 years, it's become a need, and literally people in our office crying because that's how bad they want the service for either them or their kids or whatever it may be. It's amazing. And like I said, that demand does not seem to be letting up. In fact, we had our largest month last month. We typically do about 500 to 700 new activations a month, and last month it was almost 1,000. We did 950 installs, and that's a stretch on our installers and our internal teams, but they love what they do. That was one of the other things I kind of wanted to mention about. I said that early on, but as far as like what the culture is like, I mean, our people are local. They're helping their friends and neighbors. You have to be prepared when you're wearing your logo shirt to Walmart or wherever you go. You better be prepared to talk for a while because people are going to talk to you. And but our employees love it because it's like, it's busy and it's hard, but it's really reinvigorated the whole culture of our business. And like I said, we've grown to under 50 employees now to over 120 employees as a full organization. So it's just had a huge impact on our business, on the communities, and like I said, I think the overall success of the region. So Gary, with that, I'll stop talking for a little bit, and maybe there's some questions that have come in.
Yeah, Darren, first of all, congratulations, and I love hearing these stories of, I love why you're doing this because no one else will, and that's kind of what I hear with a lot of electric co-ops. And I don't know why every electric co-op is not in the broadband business because, it's just amazing of what you guys are doing for your community. So I did have a lot of questions here. I'll start off with the easy one. Someone was just trying to understand your terminology. You said you had 7,500 members and 10,000 meters, and then also your customer density of 2.5 meters per mile. Can you kind of just net that out?
Yeah, so our members are owners in an electric co-op. All of the memberships are owners, and we're made up of a board of directors that manages the co-op that is a part of that membership. But so the members are the owners, and then they have meters, but like I said, some have multiple meters, especially when we're in a highly agricultural type area. So they might have another meter for a pump or a barn or whatever it may be. So a lot of our memberships have multiple meters out there. So we have more meters than members, obviously. But when we look at meters, that's where we have 2.5 per mile on average. So for every mile of electric line that we have, there's about 2.5 meters per mile, and that's very low density. Again, not something you'd ever think about building fiber to the home on, without additional funding or additional revenue to get there, because it's hard to do if you're less than 6 to 8 per mile.
Yeah. So just along that, there was questions about the technology. So are you using active Ethernet, or are you going with PON, or what's?
We're PON. We're a Calix shop, and we're all PON. We do a little bit of active E for some of the businesses, but by far and away the most is all PON. So and GPON right now, and moving to XGS PONs.
Yeah, great. I mean, we're seeing a lot of 10 gig XGS PON.
Mm-hmm.
What about attaching fiber to existing poles? Questions on permitting. Are you able to do that, or do you have to get more permitting?
Yeah, so on our own infrastructure, we were able to do that, and most of our infrastructure, we were fortunate, is in public right of way. But that's always been an issue with some co-ops getting into it, depending on your mix of public and private right of way and your easements and things like that. But that's always been a very relatively easy process for us. Now, obviously, when we connect to, I talked about the adjoining co-op that we are working on, we still go through the same permitting processes just like any other vendor, any other third party would to attach. But again, it's been a successful thing, and their poles were in really good shape and things like that. So it's been very successful and still been beneficial to us from a construction cost standpoint.
And there are questions about when you move into ILEC areas, what kind of competitive response are you seeing?
Very little.
Really?
I've been shocked, honestly, that we've moved in on some major cable providers, and we're seeing a little bit of competition down around or a little bit of response down around the Kansas City area. But on many of those early areas that we built, I think again because we're so rural and these communities are relatively small, they're most under 10,000. That I'm not so sure at some point they're not glad somebody else is serving them. I'm not, I've been, like I said, a little bit amazed that we haven't seen more of a response. And even in St. Joe, I think we're getting some response now, but not drastic. And to tell you the truth, the people are so fed up with the existing provider that it doesn't matter what they say or the offers they run, and we still seem to be getting the same type of demand.
Well, I mean, 70% penetration rates is awesome. Last question. I mean, got still a bunch here, but let me, given we're low on time, we constantly hear from our members that they aren't comfortable with the ROI on builds with less than 3 to 4 meters per mile. How do you make those numbers work?
Well, for us, it was a combination of funding and building those other dense markets. Again, we look at it as a whole. So again, these are our members. We're trying to get service out to them. So when we build a community that has 100 plus, passings per mile, we look at that as an overall density and can kind of balance that out. But that's really been key. And the commercial services have been really great too. I mean, obviously those are a high revenue, typically a higher revenue service, and that's really benefited us as well to help offset the cost in these really rural markets. I'll agree. If all you're doing is building fiber at 3 to 4 homes per mile, that's a tough venture. You see, so like I said, funding and community builds are really the key for us.
Well, Darren, just thank you so much. We greatly appreciate what you and United Fiber are doing for rural Missouri. And thanks for sharing your success and your insights and expertise with our audience today. And thanks everyone for joining us today. And I look forward to getting back together next Wednesday. We're going to be discussing the work from home and collaboration megatrends are fueling the fiber diet with Ron Westfall, the research director and senior analyst at Futurium Research. So you're not going to want to miss that. We will see everybody next Wednesday. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you.